Hey everybody, Omar here, the Knife Shark Guy, and I am back with another fun-filled video for you, and today I have a discussion video for you. Now, this video is more for people that are into custom knives. They don't necessarily have to be South African custom knives, they just have to be into collecting custom knives. And in front of you, I have 6 of my favorites. And today's topic on custom knives will be the concept of one-of-a-kind handmade knives. Now, I've talked about this topic before, and I kind of touched on it lightly. But for this video, I think I'm going to try and dive into it a little bit more in a sense of what is a one-of-a-kind handmade knife? How do you get a one-of-a-kind handmade knife? How can you tell that you have a one-of-a-kind handmade knife? I'm going to try and answer all those questions in this one video. And what are some tips, some tricks on getting a one-of-a-kind handmade piece? So, first off, when you get to this level of knife collecting, we have to understand one thing, okay? Custom knives are not a necessity. They're a luxury. They are the next step into this hobby. I mean, if you've collected production knives, let's be honest, even production knives are not considered a necessity. They're a luxury item. This is even more of a luxury item because you have decided to go into this world, and believe it or not, it can be kind of stressful, it can be fun, it can be exhilarating, it can be all those things. But if you're not careful, the hobby will eat you up. I gotta be honest with you. It will eat you up. It will cause you stress. It will make you crazy. You know. And that all goes with the fun of this hobby. It's like being a freaking cocaine addict. You just can't seem to stop. So let's get right into the topic that I'm talking about. One-of-a-kind handmade knives. What is a one-of-a-kind handmade knife? Well, a one-of-a-kind handmade knife basically means that you will never see another one of these knives with the same exact handle configuration looking exactly the same way. There's going to be something different about the knife that makes it a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. This one, I kind of like to... This is a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. And you definitely will probably never see another one like this ever again. I mean, you may see the scales pop up again like this with the orange and the blue, but I'm pretty sure, because when I say this knife is a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, I always put the word probably at the end of it. So you will never see another one-of-a-kind handmade knife like this. Probably is my favorite word to use in this. But this one is quite different, and I know for a fact that it's a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. For now, not just in the scales and the way the knife looks, but the internals, okay? This knife is made by Des Horn, legendary knife maker Des Horn. Guy's been making knives for, Jesus, probably long before I was even born. And he's still making knives. This knife is also a one-of-a-kind handmade piece in the internals. Now, Des Horn has made this knife by hand hundreds and hundreds of times. I'm sure there are some one-of-a-kinds out there with different handle configurations and maybe different back spacers and different pocket clips, whatever the deal might be. But this knife is really, truly a one-of-a-kind handmade piece because this is the only knife of this kind that run on ball bearings, ceramic ball bearings. Des Horn is not a firm believer in ball bearings. He believes that ball bearings are not necessary to make a knife smooth. I mean, this thing is drop shut. Once I disengage the lock bar and I tip it up, I don't do anything. It just falls shut. Now, the reason this video came up, and I decided to do this video, is because I was told by Des Horn, okay, that this knife here is a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. And I go on YouTube, and I see there's this young man showing off his video of his Mvubu. The video is only about 31 seconds long, but he's holding my knife in his hand, and I was told that it was a one-of-a-kind handmade piece by Des Horn himself. And he told me that he never worked with this electric blue carbon fiber. But actually, at the time, I'm pretty sure that was true, because I'm guessing that mine was probably the first Mvubu made with this electric blue carbon fiber. So he was telling the truth at that time. What I did not expect is probably a few months later, there would be somebody else on YouTube with the same exact knife. So now the knife is no longer a one-of-a-kind. And, I was kind of depressed about that, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and do a video on this and give people some tips and tricks on how to go about by getting a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. But before I do that, I just wanted to show off some of these knives real quickly. So this is my one-of-a-kind handmade piece made by Andre Thorburn. The scales are, white Westinghouse with the eagle on it. And if you go on Instagram, you will see another knife that looks similar to it, but not exactly the same. He did make this knife again with white Westinghouse, but the white Westinghouse is not the same exact color. In fact, the other gentleman's knife that looks like mine is all white. It does not have this sort of brown streak going on it. Plus, his eagle is not colored. It's monochrome. So, therefore, as of right now, this knife is still a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. So, I'm real kind of happy with that. I'm kind of hoping he's not going to reproduce the same exact one, because that's really going to be a blow. But I'll get to that in a little bit on how to understand that whole concept. This one is Andre Thorburn's production version knife. This is the L Compact 51 flipper. And this is definitely not a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. He's probably made, I'm going to guess, maybe 25 of these that are out there that look exactly like this one. L Compact 51 front flipper. This is one made by J.D. Van Deventer with carbon fiber scales, M390 blades, called a Palladium flipper. This is also not a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. He has made this knife before. And this one is also by J.D. Van Deventer, but this one really is a true one-of-a-kind handmade piece. Supposedly you will not see another one like this in this handle configuration again. Or if you do, there hopefully there'll be something different on it. Maybe you won't have the same zirconium pocket clip, on it. And for the final knife, this was my latest one-of-a-kind handmade piece by Costi Steenkamp. This also has white Westinghouse on it. See, again, if you look at the white Westinghouse material, they're completely different looking. This one has sort of like a brown streak down the middle of it. And this one is just sort of straight all white. Now, in case any of you guys aren't familiar with this white Westinghouse, it's actually just refrigerator insulation. They found out that this refrigerator insulation, that's about, 100 years old, is actually practically indestructible material, and South African knife makers have found out that this material is practically indestructible. So they put it on knives, and it adds sort of a nice artistic touch to a knife piece. All right, so I've showed you all my knives. So how in the world do you get a one-of-a-kind handmade piece? What are the tips? What are the tricks? What's your safe best bet? How do we do that? So let's talk about that for a quick minute. There are a couple of ways you can get a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. One way is to just talk to the knife maker and say, hey, can you make me something really wild and really different, and leave it at that. Okay? That's one way you can do it. That's basically how I've done a lot of my custom one-of-a-kind handmade pieces, and that's going to start to change for me a little bit, I've learned. Okay, so that's one way. Just talk to a knife maker and say, can you make me something completely different? You will discuss the materials with the knife maker to some degree, but you're not going to get into too much detail. And I'll explain why. If you get into too much detail with your knife and with ordering your knife, when you want a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, guess what? The time frame for you to get your custom is going to stretch out longer and longer and longer. More than likely, for quite a few reasons, the material that you're asking for is probably not available. They're going to have to go and look for it, research it. Maybe it's so extremely rare, they're going to have to see if they can actually put it on a knife for you, for your special one-of-a-kind handmade piece. So to be honest with you, being a pain in the ass when it comes to ordering your one-of-a-kind handmade piece, I wouldn't suggest you do that, because what could happen is that once you make the deal to have your knife made, there's a good possibility that you've discussed with the knife maker that the knife will take 6 months. But guess what? 6 months could turn into a year could turn into a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. Who knows when you'll see your knife? So the more details you work with the knife maker on your one-of-a-kind handmade piece, the longer it's going to take for you to get your knife. So tip 1, go ahead and ask for particular materials. If you are familiar with the knife materials that you want on your knife, go ahead and ask for it. But at the same time, try not to add any more to your knife, because it's going to make it a longer and longer wait. Yes, you will definitely guarantee it's going to be a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, because he's probably never going to make that one again, because making it the first time is probably a pain in the ass, let alone the chances of that knife maker making that same exact knife again for someone else, you've just reduced it down to nothing. So the chances of that happening won't happen again. Hence this knife here. Now, even though the scales do not look quite that elaborate, I can guarantee you that doing the internals on this one-of-a-kind imvubu for Des Horn was a pain in the ass for him. I know that for a fact, because this is not actually the first ball bearing imvubu knife that I have gotten from him. The very first one that I got from him was basically a prototype, and I didn't know it was a prototype, and neither did he. He thought it was the final product, and it wasn't. It turned out not to be the final product because of me. I called up Des Horn. I didn't really complain about the knife, but I just told him that I wasn't happy with the way that it was built, because when I got the prototype version that looks exactly like this knife, with the ball bearings in this knife that looks exactly like it, the screw here, the bottom screw, was busted on it. He couldn't figure out how to get the scales close together and keep the screw, or not having to somehow fix the screw up just so that the knife would fit, because that was the very first time he had ever made a ball bearing knife with this, in this model. He'd never done that before, so he wasn't sure if it could be done. And I Instagrammed him, or actually I think I emailed him and told him I was unhappy with the knife. I was real scared when I approached the gentleman, because this is Des Horn. I don't want to piss him off. I don't want to make him mad. I don't want to make him angry. But I was a little bit concerned that the knife wasn't as great looking as it could have been. And he wasn't angry at all. He was super nice about it. He goes, "You know what, Omar? I'm real sorry that the first knife didn't turn out the way you wanted to. I'm going to fix it for you. All right? Don't worry about the other knife. Just send it back." And he told me to send it back to a friend of his here in the United States, because at the time we had just started the pandemic. And so I sent the knife over to his friend, and I haven't seen that knife since. I'm sure he still has it. It's somewhere with his friend. I don't know what happened to that knife. It's gone. But just about 2.5 months later, he gives me this knife, and this one turned out perfect. So the whole point of that story is that because he had never made a ball-bearing knife in this model before, I'm pretty sure it was not an enjoyable experience for him. So he's probably not going to want to challenge himself by making this one again with ball bearings in it. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be in his custom arsenal for this model knife. Because Des Horn really does not believe in ball bearings. Case in point, like I said, this one has ball bearings, right? Practically falls shut with just gravity. This one is not this one is not a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, and this one is just a washer knife. But look at how smooth that is. It's almost like it is a ball bearing knife, but it's not. So basically what you want to do is fall somewhere in between to guarantee yourself a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. You don't just want to go to a knife maker and say, hey, why don't you just make me something wild and wacky, or just make me something that you can make as a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. Because what's going to happen is that knife maker is just going to go around his warehouse. I'm just guessing, okay? I'm not saying this as a fault of any knife makers at all. I'm just imagining that this is what happens when you ask for a one-of-a-kind handmade piece and you do not put any of your own input into the making of your one-of-a-kind handmade piece. So if you tell your knife maker, whichever knife maker that is, they're all great, but if you tell the knife maker, can you please make me a one-of-a-kind handmade piece using rare materials, and then you release yourself from the responsibility of guaranteeing that the knife will be a one-of-a-kind handmade piece by not being specific with the materials that you want on your knife, then the chances of that knife being a one-of-a-kind handmade piece has just lessened. So, case in point, I mean, this knife has materials on it. As everybody knows, I mean, the knife is definitely handmade. There's no doubt about that. However, let's be realistic here. White Westinghouse, as rare of a material as it is, it's not quite that rare, is it? I mean, at least not in the world of custom knives. I mean, any knife maker can probably get a hold of White Westinghouse and put it on your knife. So there's a pretty good chance that this knife could be recreated again in some fashion. However, if I told the knife maker, you know what, is there any way we can make the bolster have a shot of gold around the pivot here, or can we have zirconium collars on the pivot, or maybe going around the knife? So now you're increasing the chances of the knife being a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. And that's good, but the problem is you're going to have to know when to stop, because the more stuff you add onto it, the more indistinguishable features you decide you want your knife to have, the longer and longer it's going to take for you to get your knife. Again, it could be the original agreed time could be 6 months. Well, guess what? Now it goes from 6 months to a year and a half. To 2 years, and it's all because you wanted more stuff on your knife. You wanted your, maybe you wanted your steel to be, I don't know, some kind of a rare steel. Like on this knife, I mean, this knife has nitrobe 77 on it. That's a fairly rare steel to get a hold of, so chances are maybe the knife maker might not have access to it at that point in time, so now you've just increased the time frame for your knife to be made. So what you want to do when you get your one-of-a-kind handmade piece is to meet the knife maker somewhere in the middle. Decide on what rare materials you want the knife to have. Decide on how you want the knife to look together. That's going to be a lot of fun for you and the knife maker. Just try not to add any more items on top of it, or try not to make the material so freaking rare that he's probably going to have to chase the ends of the earth to try and see if he can find it. Maybe you might have seen that material on someone else's knife and you want it on your knife, but maybe you don't want it on the handle. Maybe you want it for the pivot collar. Maybe it's a kind of a material that he cannot curve or make into a circle to put it onto the pivot to make it look like that. So all these things have to be into consideration, okay? But just to end this video, okay, when we're talking about a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, keep in mind you're also talking about the knife being a one-of-a-kind handmade experience, because you had a hand in making the knife with the knife maker. Now, I've got a buddy named James He's on Instagram. I hope he doesn't mind me saying his last name because he's really a cool guy. He's just a really great friend to know. I met him on Instagram. We have a lot of things in common, hence the Mbubus. He got an Mbubu because of me, so I'm kind of happy about that. He's real happy with his Mbubu piece. I'm very happy with both of mine. We became friends that way. We kind of talk about knives back and forth. The reason I bring him up is because he's one of these guys who's so educated in the materials that he wants on his knife that I think, and this is just my theory, I think that knife makers really probably don't want to deal with them all that much, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. It's just that he doesn't seem to have a lot of luck with getting the messaging out to the knife makers with where are they in the process of having his knife made. I'm not saying that they ignore him. They don't, because he does get messages back from them, but he doesn't get messages right away for whatever reason. Maybe it's just luck. I don't know. But my friend Jim is just such a cool guy, and he's such a fan of custom knives and the materials that go on his knife. He's one of the pain in the ass guys, but he's one of the pain in the ass guys in a fun way. And I'm pretty sure that if there were knife makers out there that wanted a challenge, I would definitely guarantee that I would tell any of the South African knife makers that I have met on Instagram to contact James if they want to have a knife. If they want to challenge themselves as knife makers, because that guy, my friend James, he really does know the materials really well. I don't know how he got to know the materials as well as he does, but he knows what will work on a knife, what won't work on a knife, what he likes on a knife, what would look pretty on a knife. I mean, if you go on Instagram and you take a look at his Mbubu, I'm going to guarantee you're going to love his Mbubu handle configuration better than mine, because his handle configuration, I'm going to say this right now, I'm really jealous of it because his is absolutely gorgeous. He's got these, and I know for a fact that he did not order these screws, but he's got these really beautiful custom screws. Mine are beautiful enough, but this is basically the standard Deshorn screws. His are just like these really beautiful, like, I'm sure some of you guys are too young to remember Liberace, but I'm going to call them like these beautiful, Liberace was a concert pianist many years ago, but he's got like these gorgeous, like Liberace screws on them, and they're just absolutely beautiful, and he's got this gorgeous black 3D marble carbon fiber on his knife. I mean, holy shit, it is just absolutely gorgeous. And he doesn't, and I'm admitting this now on this video, every time he shows me his Mbubu, I don't get pissed, but I do get a little bit ribald, because even my one-of-a-kind handmade piece with the ball bearings in it, even though I love this knife, and I know that it's a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, when I look at his knife, I'm just like, oh man, I wish I'd gotten what he got. But he paid a price to have the knife made the way he wants. Well, not in that knife, no. That knife he got really fairly quick. I don't know how he did that. But he got that knife fairly quick. He got it like within less than a couple of months, he got his knife. And that's one thing about this one, is he does work quite quick. I mean, I got this knife in about 3 months. I got this one in like 6 weeks. But that's a video for another time. It depends on how well the knife maker might even like you. If they like you on a personal level, for some odd reason, it's just my theory, but the knife maker will speed up the process of your knife just because he likes you, and you are a repeat good customer. You've never, like not paid the knife maker or not told them that you can't commit to the knife, which I've talked about in previous videos. If you pass the test in that sense, then most knife makers will definitely understand that you are now a stamped-on, awesome knife customer, and they're definitely someone that when you contact them, you are considered pretty much a serious customer in their eyes. Because when you get into this hobby, all customers are treated exactly the same. Exactly the same. I don't believe that I get any different treatment than any other customer when it comes to having my knives made. It's just that I'm not super picky about the stuff that I want on my knife. But that's going to change because I want stuff like this guaranteed. If someone tells me it's going to be a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, I want it to be a one-of-a-kind handmade piece. And while I kind of chuckle at my friend Jim, that guy's got it going on. Because he always seems to get knives, his custom handmade knives, like I get my custom handmade knives. But he is practically never unhappy with the final product. Not that I am, but because he put a little more of his time and a little bit more of his effort into getting his knife made, the handmade experience, he actually got more out of it rather than I did, because it just seems like I just want a knife. I gotta have my knife. I want it to be special. I'm that quick about it. He, on the other hand, he's been around, so he knows how to order these knives. The thing that he loses is the time. So when I order my knife could be 6 months. Tops, just because I didn't ask for anything special on my knife. But Jim, he says, well, I would like zirconium colors on here. I want the black marble carbon fiber with that beautiful 3D effect. I want the backspace liners to have a zigzag design instead of, the proprietary design that you put on there. And maybe we can put like an eagle on, whatever. He puts more things into it. But for my friend Jim, he's going to have to learn to stop doing that so much, because the time frame to get his knife made just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And keep in mind, these knife makers, they never say no. They will get your knife made, and you will get your knife delivered to you. But the more things you put on the knife, man, the longer it's going to take for you to get your handmade piece. Those of you guys out there that deal with custom knives like me, you know what I'm talking about, man. I mean, these knife makers, as nice as they are, all of the stress is on us, not on them, because we're such fans of this hobby that we want the knife the way we want it, and we can't wait to get it. And I guess the whole point of this video was to understand that you're going to want to meet yourself in the middle between what the knife maker can make for you and what materials you want to have on the knife. If one of those two items is to the extreme, your knife is going to take longer and longer and longer. Because keep in mind, you are not the only customer these people have. You could probably be, knife order number, I don't know, depending on whether or not the knife maker's got a huge roster of customers, for whatever period of time we're looking at for the year. I mean, you could be like number 115, or you could be, knife maker number 30, but that makes no difference. If you keep talking to the knife maker while your knife is in the process of being made, your knife will take longer and longer before you receive the piece. And I think that's the point of this video. So 2 things. Keep in mind that the only person who can really guarantee that a knife is a one-of-a-kind handmade piece are 2 people, yourself and the knife maker. If you meet the knife maker halfway by putting exotic materials on it, and if you meet him halfway and you don't put too many items on the knife, it could be a fun, pleasurable experience. If you just continue to keep going and going and going, and maybe changing your mind and go, you know what, I don't want the ball bearings on there, just make it a washer knife, or change the configuration of the backspacer, put it down a little bit. Whatever changes you have on your knife, it's going to take longer and longer. So, a couple of things to keep in mind, okay? Go ahead and ask for these exotic materials that you learned about in getting your knife made. That's one thing. Go ahead and do that. I definitely guarantee that that's something you should do, right? But just don't go overboard. And once you've made your decision of what materials you want on the knife and how you want the knife to look, stop. Don't contact him again. Don't go and try and make new changes to the knife. That's just going to destroy the time frame that you agreed upon with the knife maker to have the knife made. Okay, so just keep all of that in mind. You want to meet the knife maker halfway between what materials you want on the knife and exactly how you want your knife to look. If you can come to a reasonable conclusion in getting both of those activities together, then I can almost guarantee two things. Number one, you're going to walk away with a one-of-a-kind handmade piece, and you're going to walk away with a fantastic one-of-a-kind handmade experience that you're always going to remember. So don't go overboard, but go ahead and add your input. And that being said, I'm going to end this long half-hour video. I'm very sorry that I talked so long, but I wanted to get my thoughts out on one-of-a-kind handmade pieces. And this is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, signing off. And I'm going to be back in a couple of seconds, guys, because I got a new knife. So just want to say goodbye, and I'll see you in a little bit. And take a look at these beautiful knives. I know you're going to want maybe even this video is probably going to push you into your very first custom, and I hope that it's going to be a pleasurable experience for you if it's your first one. Thank you so much for watching. This is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, on the video of one-of-a-kind handmade pieces. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video in about 5 minutes. Have a good evening, guys.